All right, go live. All right, we're good to go. There's already 5 people watching. They were waiting for this one. I guess I had to tweet about it yesterday.
Go away, 5 people. Go, you got something better to do.
Oh, move this camera down a tiny bit. It's Tuesday, July 13th, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we're talking about collecting in games, and probably not the kind of collecting you're thinking about. So it was a moderately sad weekend. Emily and I had to travel back out to Leroy for a death in the family. Her uncle passed away, sadly. I'll post a link to the obituary just to spread the little bit of his life that is interesting to strangers. But
I was
also,
surprised that you went. I was surprised you went so soon because they weren't Jewish, right? So,
no, well, we didn't go out for the funeral. We went out just to be with the family and help everyone sort of get through it because it was sudden and pretty much unexpected. Like this was a situation like that. But I'm not gonna depress you with all the details here. You can just I'll link to the obituary. But on the way there, as you know, we have a car. It's an old car. It's like an old Chevy Cruze. And that's the best way in COVID, even in these sort of waning COVID times, hopefully waning, to get out to a place like that.
Now they're waxing.
Yeah, in some
waxing
places
right now.
It's a
in New York, it is waxing.
it's well, it depends. It's waxing in some neighborhoods and continuing to wane in other neighborhoods. I read the recent data.
Well, the graph is going up. That's, that's not good.
I'm still avoiding things like flying or big mass transit if I can. So we drove out there, and I did recently, because it's an old car, go to the local Pep Boys because they were the only place anywhere nearby that'll take online appointments and I could do everything without talking to a human. And I got a brake job. Had them replace the front rotors, car crap, the kind of stuff I haven't had to deal with in a long time. I honestly forgot how much of a pain in the ass it is to own a car.
So good not having a car.
So I got
so good when a car doesn't have you,
right.
You know?
Oh, add what Josh Newman actually was tweeting about the car game recently. The war on cars is escalating. So I got this brake job, and this is going to be the first big trip I've taken since I got the brake job. And we're driving, and
the brakes cut out.
So as soon as we are in the middle of fuck all nowhere, Pennsylvania, because we're taking the angle way up instead of the throughway way up. Because the angle way saves 45 minutes of driving, but
a little bit, yeah.
It goes through Scranton and middle of nowhere. Check engine light comes on.
All those rest stops and whatnot if you go the angle way.
Yep. So I'm like, check engine light.
You missed some tolls. Well, the angle way is less tolls.
It is. So check engine light. Nothing's wrong with the car. So I feel like, okay, coming up, next time I stop to get gas, I'm gonna check out this check engine light and deal with it later. Because in RIT, I drove a car with the check engine light for 3 years because I couldn't afford to even take it.
Yeah, because check engine light, it could be without connecting the computer thing, to get the actual readout, right? It's it could be fucking anything. They basically have all errors are hooked up to one light, and it's just error. And
there's only 2 states of that light in most cars. If it turns on, it means anything, and if it flashes, which almost no one has ever seen in their life. Flashing means turn the car off right now. Pull over immediately and maybe exit the vehicle. It might catch fire.
I've never seen that in my life, ever.
I saw it once. You know what I saw it on? A car where the engine had just exploded. Literally. Mm-hmm. I started the car, the engine exploded, the hood dented and everything, and then the check-in engine light just started flashing. And I was like, thanks. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks. There's no engine anymore. I'll check that engine.
So,
none of it.
Not too long later, the car starts running a little rough, shuddering. So now I'm like, so pull off immediately the next exit. And we pull into the first mechanic we can find because I got to get it to a mechanic because I don't want to turn it off. And we get to a mechanic. I stop the car. I get out and the guy's like, oh, we're full up. I'm done for the day. So I'm like, eh. So I open the hood and he starts looking at the hood, looking inside. He's like, oh, did you check your oil? I see a little smoke. Maybe something's going on. And the whole time he's talking, I can see very clearly that smoke is coming off of the left front caliper on the brakes.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, the brakes burned themselves out because that brake just seized full on while we were driving. But because the car was going fast enough, the engine just overpowered it and just ran the brake seized until eventually it overheated and broke completely. I go to the next mechanic who's open, who normally doesn't work on American cars. It's like this guy who only focuses. It's like a Eurosports place.
Yeah, I've seen those ones.
Yeah, but the guy's like, "Oh God, I'll help you out." And he looks at the brake and he's like, "Whoever did your brakes fucked him up, like baby's first brake job." So he fixed it for me.
So you get for going to Pep Boy.
Yep, didn't even charge me that much. But he was like, he gave me the rotor, and he was like, "Drop this on the desk of whoever you're gonna go sue over that."
That's right.
So I'm gonna sue the Pep Boys.
You can just.
Well, I'm gonna go demand they pay for the new brake job I got and my inconvenience.
All service, has like a warranty. So you're just gonna get the apply for the warranty for the service, and they give you the money back that you spent on.
But the emergency repair I had to get to deal with this problem was a couple $100 above.
Yeah, that's probably included in the warranty on the service from the other, from the Pet Boy.
So I'm going to have a conversation with the Pet Boys.
You don't need to sue them unless they don't want to,
no, they all, as long as if they honor the warranty and pay for all this, then I won't sue them.
Even if they do honor the warranty, you just go to a small claim court. That's a small claim.
Oh, that's definitely a small claim.
It's like a textbook small claim, and you'll walk in there, you just plop the rotor down on the judge's desk, be like.
So here's where the story gets interesting. That check engine light was unrelated to this problem.
Uh-oh.
So he clears the codes, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's like a P290, like under boost." He's like, "It's not a problem." So I cleared it, and he started it again. It didn't come back, but that didn't make any sense. There's no turbo in that car. What the fuck does under boost mean for a car without a turbo or a super?
Maybe they messed with your computer at the Pep Boys.
Maybe because that Pep Boys, remember, was the place where the fart car conversation was happening.
Yeah.
So the air check engine light comes on. So now I'm in a town. So like a couple days later, I just go to like a local AutoZone because pretty much any place will read those codes and tell you what they are for free.
Your problem is you're always going to like, these, notice how you went to a Pep Boy, right? Not good. Then you went to just some guy out in the middle of nowhere and it was good, right? Then now you're going to an AutoZone. Lesson not learned.
No.
Always go to just some shady guy for the car biz. Don't
No. So here's the trick.
Places.
You only go to an AutoZone to get them to pull the codes for free.
Would you go to Best Buy for computer biz? No. So you shouldn't be going to AutoZone, right?
Yeah.
If you got to go to some guy, right?
The problem is some guy is so. When we got to the Eurosport place, because he was like, "Oh, I don't normally work on cars." I was like, "Oh, is there anyone else within like, I don't know, 50 miles that you would recommend?" And he says, "No, every mechanic within 100 miles of this location is bullshit."
Yeah, you got to go to some guy who doesn't suck. I'm not saying all the some guys are good. I'm saying all the brand places.
No. Do not get me wrong. I did not go to this AutoZone to get car repairs. I went because they will pull the codes for free and tell me what they are and give me a printout. That's it.
All right. Okay.
So I went there. They pull the codes, and it looks like the O2 sensors are just like dying because it's an old car.
That's like the most common thing for
100% unrelated to the brakes caught fire.
Yep.
So yeah, that was my car adventures.
Okay, I'm glad not to have a car. I got a story that's also car related.
Ooh,
I was not in the car.
I'm excited about this because this is one of those rare instances where all you said before the show was this would have been a situation where Rim being around would have been useful.
It would have been very useful. So I'm biking yesterday in a city bike to the dentist, right? Where I delayed.
Oh, I just made a dentist appointment. Now that it's time,
I delayed my previous dentist appointment.
As did I.
Until yesterday. So I went yesterday to Manhattan, right? And I'm city biking over, right? And going down Crescent. And I'm crossing a street, little intersection, and it's pretty early in the morning because my dentist appointment's at 10 a.m., so it's 9 something. And the cars are backed up trying to get on the bridge on Crescent, like they are usually, right?
Oh, yeah.
And some car, comes in from the left side, and he's, trying to, wedge himself into the, to the line of traffic that's solid and barely moving. And he turns a little too sharply, right? So like there's the bollards on the bike lane, right? So he's a little like his left headlight is a little bit to the inside. So he's gonna have to back up a little bit, right, to get back into the to get around the other side, right? And I'm like, okay, I just keep going, and I'm on my way I'm about like a block north of like the Queens Plaza there. And I look behind me, and I see that car, right, rather than try to wedge into the traffic, has decided to just slowly drive down the bike lane.
Woo! Yeah, I can see why, because I'm the one who would be like pulling the license plate off the back, like chasing the guy, banging on his hood.
So not seeing anything around, I just stop. and turn my bike sideways and don't move.
Pro. And it's a city bike. What's he going to do? Destroy his car?
I'm just sitting there, right? And
for those of you who don't live in New York, these city bikes are bike rentals, like from docks. They weigh 55 pounds. They're made of solid steel.
So I just
tubular
stop.
steel.
I'm like, what am I? I got nowhere to be. I got other than the dentist, right? You know.
That's a rim move right there. That's like the pro move. Don't aggressively confront. Just.
I didn't even say anything. I just basically, just sat there. I'm just, it's like, I'm just sitting there in the bike lane, just not doing nothing, right? He starts yelling and cursing and threatening or whatever. And I'm like, okay, hit me and go to jail. It's like not my problem, right?
See, the only thing is you got to be standing there holding your phone.
Out and I'm going to the dentist anyway.
You got to be holding your phone, like obviously recording him.
I don't have the phone record instinct, but I probably.
Sometimes I don't even.
If the incident would have lasted longer, then that would have come to that point. But it was less than like a minute-long incident because
I got that guy who tried to punch me to back off. I didn't even record him. I just held my phone up like I was recording him, and I pretended I was calling the cops on speakerphone. That was it. I didn't do anything.
No, it would have gotten to that if it had lasted more than a few more seconds, right? It's like if the guy shoots me dead, it's like, well, I guess that's how I die. Okay. If he runs me over, okay, I guess that's
good luck getting over that city bike to get to you.
It's, he clearly was, a person with a lot of anger issues and no regard for the law or other human beings. But his car wasn't farting, although it definitely looked like a car that, was cared for. Like whoever was driving it cared about, the car being shiny or whatever, just generic cursing coming out of him, get out of the way, whatever. But I just don't move. And after a few seconds, he backs up a little bit, right? And I'm just like, all right, just waiting for him to go back into the traffic, and give up, and then I'll be on my way. He just goes right on the sidewalk. And I'm like,
whoa. See, that's why recording, because then there's consequences for someone like that.
Maybe, but I couldn't exactly do anything about that. I'm just like, well, he just drives out and he just got it. There was someone biking a city bike in the opposite, like towards him, and they could have blocked the sidewalk if they wanted to, but they chose not to. And I wasn't going to be.
I don't fault anyone for not.
Like, hey, other random person I'd never met, I demand you also put your life at risk. But
if that had been me coming the opposite direction, you know exactly what I would have done.
Sidewalk, no hesitation.
And my phone would have somehow been in my hand before you even blinked.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, but so he went down the sidewalk and got around me, and that was that. Before if he would have lasted a little longer, there would have been some phone action. But he he went down the sidewalk, and then rather than go into the traffic, he basically made a left and probably was going to go down, make a right towards Queens Plaza and then come at it from the other direction, right? The way the buses come.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, I guess I can't stop you, angry guy. But
there's been a lot of gas-powered vehicle incursions into bike lanes lately. Queensboro, like the Queens Bridge, like 59th Street Bridge, I get passed by multiple full-on motorcycles regularly biking to work now.
Yeah, I feel like the solution, right? I'm trying to think like different solutions that aren't like, cops or anything, right? Because it's like, and, this solution is also obviously very problematic and, extremely problematic. But I kind of like it the best because all the solutions are problematic, right?
The ones that physically disable or block the car?
No. I think what we should do is the rule should be that if you video it, right? So you prove that you're not just, being, a nut job, right? That if there's like a car in the bike lane or even just an illegally parked car, right? And you have video proving that this car is illegally parked, right? And that they're breaking the law, that, no tickets, no courts, you don't need any of that shit. It's just legally open season on the car. You can smash it. You can.
I was waiting for the Scott moment in that idea.
Yeah, it's just legally open season. If you prove that this is really somebody who is misbehaving, it's like we don't need to ticket them. We don't need to do any no bother with any of that stuff. Just you can smash and scratch the fuck out of that car you can't hurt anybody, right? So you can't like smash the windshield if someone's in the car, right? But if there's no one in the car, smash away. It's like, you want to steal the catalytic converter from the car and sell it? Go right the fuck ahead.
Imagine the app. Like, you submit the video and GPS and all that, and then an attendant gives you the go, no-go on can you attack this vehicle?
Yeah, right, exactly. And you know what? It's like that would actually achieve, well, it would achieve the desired goal, I think, better than any of the other options, which is people with cars would not fuck around, right? It's like a ticket doesn't scare you from stopping speeding or illegal parking, right? You know, even getting, you know, arrested or license points, like none of those things are actually a deterrent. Right?
All I'm picturing here is just Street Fighter 2.
Smash the fuck out of a car, right? You wouldn't have to worry about people smashing the fuck out of cars because nobody would park illegally even once, right? Because there'd be people with, like, you know, crowbars just wandering, like, please, 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 please. I really want to smash. I really want to get my Street Fighter 2 bonus stage on real bad, right? And it's like, no, you would not see a double parking for even 1 second because everyone with a car would be terrified that would be the end of their car. Right? And that would achieve, it's like, you don't need to worry about the vigilante justice aspect because it would never happen. You would get the deterrent effect that you really want, which is every car obeys the law perfectly at all times.
Well, this is why, you know,
if you had a car, if you were driving, right, and that was the case, that there was truly open season on cars, would you even dare to even, like, go past a stop sign for, like, you know, a little bit, right?
Well, the only thing I would do, not me, but like the I don't know, the royal we, the person who's out there, the Cartman of the world.
You be the crowbar guy.
There's the person who would steal someone else's car that they disliked and park it somewhere illegally and leave it. That way they don't get caught with a stolen car and a bunch of bystanders destroy that car.
But if you stealing the car would still be the crime.
I mean, that's still obviously the crime, but I'm saying that would happen.
Getting caught stealing a car would still be the same consequences as now, so nothing would change in terms of Grand Theft Auto, right? It would mean that after the Grand Theft Auto, the car was disposed of by free. Yeah, I don't know.
So anyway, the purge of cars aside, in the news, we didn't do some Tuesday. Tuesdays are the shows we miss least often, but a bunch of stuff happened.
They're the easiest to do.
So there's a bunch of gaming news we didn't talk about, but instead of doing a gaming news roundup, we're just going to talk about a couple things that are particularly notable. And the main thing I want to talk about is the announcement that Advance Wars 1 and Advance Wars 2 are getting a reboot, like remake, on the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, so these are the two GBA Advance Warses, right? They're going to combine them into a single game. You're going to get it on your Switch, so you can be able to play it 1080p portably, you know, in your dock, or 720p portably.
Yep,
right?
there's
like
online play
games.
confirmed.
There is some amount of online play with presumably Nintendo Online subscription required of some amount. I imagine it'll just be play the multiplayer mode with randos or friend codes or who knows what, right?
Yep. Finally, I can prove how fucking amazing I am at these games.
But yeah, it's just going to, you know, all indications, all the information we have so far suggests is just going to be Advance Wars. Like nothing really, other than the online play and the increased resolution and graphics, it's just going to be those two games. Same missions, same maps, same everything.
Yep. The only thing I'm annoyed about is
those two games and you don't want to, you know, do the online part, you don't really need to buy this.
Yep,
yeah.
I'm going to buy it. 1, because I want to review it and like go deep on it and see what else they do. 2, I do want to play online. And 3, I do want to stream the hell out of these games. And I'd rather just stream whatever's on the Switch instead of like my emulator.
Streaming from a Switch is a lot easier than streaming from a GBA or GBA emulator.
Exactly.
Right? I think the preferred way to stream from GBAs is to get a GameCube with a Game Boy player underneath and then use that.
I do have a good DS emulator that I use to stream DS games. That's what I've been using for Advance Wars Days of Ruin.
But I have the DS emulator. It's like, because you don't get the touchscreen viz, right? It's like, it's not.
Oh, no, it's only good for Advance Wars where you would never use a touchscreen.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. But do you know what? I have 2 ROMs, Advance Wars DS and Advance Wars DR.
Yeah.
But
so yeah,
the notable part about this is 1, I've talked a lot in the old days, like Advance Wars.
The notable part is that Nintendo has not forgotten that Advance Wars exists.
Yes, because Advance Wars, I would argue, it is almost alone in a genre in terms of quality. No game that is like this in terms of turn-based, military units, fighting on a grid. No game in the Nintendo ecosystem, and arguably much of the rest of the world's ecosystem, even comes close to the level of polish of the game mechanics of Advance Wars, especially Advance Wars 2 and Advance Wars Days of Ruin. And The reason these games are so phenomenal, in my opinion, is the same reason Chrono Trigger was so phenomenal. It cost way too much to make them. It took way too many people, way too much effort, and there's no way to make money making games like that anymore for the most part.
Advance Wars really cost that? It was that hard to make?
Yes, we talked about this on GeekNights. There was even an article about it when they revealed how many people were involved in the level design of the Advance Wars games.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours they spent. I'll dig up. We talked about this like 7-8 years ago on GeekNights.
Okay, that's why I don't remember.
But the thing that's also interesting is that Advance Wars Days of Ruin, the last game, the one I'm actually streaming, is the most fair one. It's the fairest, it's the most balanced, it's the best like ortho game competition between humans. Advance Wars 1 and 2 are way more fun, but they are not balanced. And the thing I'm really curious to see is if there is any thought to how to balance the COs in online play, or if they don't balance them, because you could just pick the overpowered COs and always win, or everyone will play the same few S-tier COs, and there's a lot of cheap nonsense. Like, the games are more about the puzzle.
I mean, that's not different. That's not any different from fighting games that aren't balanced, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you're playing competitive Advance Wars, they're either A, going to be banning, right, Sturm or whoever.
Sturm and Hachi are the ones I think you'd have to ban.
Yeah, right. You're either putting in bans.
Maybe let Nell play. Nell's not actually that good.
Right. Or people are only playing the S-tier ones and the other ones aren't viable in competitive play, right?
Yep. Or there's different leagues. Like there's the main 3 COs only league or something.
I think there's also the other option of Fox only Final Destination, no CO power, right? It's like just play Advance Wars.
But that's kind of what Days of Ruin is. Which is just, it's also Days of Ruin.
A bit of CO power, but they're much weaker.
Well, yeah, they're also much more balanced and fair. But the other thing is
the
that
DS one, they're way OP with the double power.
Oh God, Advance Wars DS is broken to the
a little Eagle and a Sammy.
Eagle and Sammy combined is like a one turn, one action KO.
My infantry can see like a blurry mirage of your HQ. I win.
Yep. Advance Wars DS is just unbalanceable fun nonsense. So we'll see how this all goes. I'm pretty excited about this just because Advance Wars was kind of forgotten, except among weirdos like me. And now that community is so excited that I've found all the Advance Wars streamers. Everyone came out of the woodwork. I even started streaming Advance Wars again.
Okay.
In some other news, Nintendo announced the Nintendo Switch Pro, and fanboys egged on by the less well-written, less well-curated gaming media, had this idea in their head that this was going to be a more powerful Switch for some reason, or a 4K
if you look,
Switch.
Nintendo has the history, right, of going back to, way in the olden days, right? Super olden days. The NES, they made a top-loading NES,
yeah.
right? The SNES, there's like a better SNES model that's like different, that looks sort of like a top-loading NES if you've never seen it. There's not a lot of them. I don't see them often, but they exist. There was the Game Boy, then there was the Game Boy Pocket.
Game Boy Pocket, Game Boy Color.
The Game Boy Pocket was just a lot better.
Yep.
There was a Game Boy Color.
Or remember the Game Boy Micro?
The Game Boy Advance, there was a Game Boy Advance SP and then a Game Boy Advance Micro. It's like they upgraded that shit twice.
Yep.
The DS, there was DS Lite.
DS XL?
Yeah, it's like Nintendo has a history of re-releasing consoles in superior versions that are upgraded. And with the 3DS, right? The 3DS could be considered one of those, but also sort of a new console, right? But with the 3DS, they tried something that they hadn't done before, which is they made the new 3DS, which actually was a better processor, right? And there were games that would only play on 3DS and would not play on regular DS. And that did not do very well. Like it was a very small number of games. None of them were really significant.
It worked better when they did it more like the Game Boy Color, where some games would have a little bit of extra fun stuff or look different if you played it on the new one.
Game Boy Color, there were Game Boy Color exclusive games, but there were also these sort of DX cartridges, and they re-released Link's Awakening on a DX cartridge, for example, and Metroid 2 on a DX cartridge.
That added that. It adds that skeleton puzzle.
Yeah, those exactly. Yeah, those cartridges could play in an old school Game Boy or Pocket and they would just be normal. But if they played them on a Game Boy Color, they would be fancier than if you took the original Game Boy cartridge and put it in a Game Boy Color.
But generally, you can't release an iteration on an existing console where now there's a bunch of games that just won't work on the old console because now game people have to say, do I make a game using the better capabilities knowing only a small number of people from this base have this? They almost have to treat it like a new console or make everything backward compatible.
Right, or yeah, exactly. Do the DX model, right, where you make your game so it works on old Switches, but also new Switches. And if someone has a new Switch, your game is better somehow, and that adds to development cost, right?
So what they announced was actually what I expected, and I think is a perfectly, like, if I need a second Switch or if mine dies or something, like, this is what I would buy. The updated Nintendo Switch has better battery life, partly because it has a bigger, nicer OLED screen in the console.
And there's some other minor upgrades. I think it might have more storage inside.
Yeah, but I think there's a few minor upgrades like that, but games will run the same as was expected.
Yes, it's not really, it's obviously a better Switch. If you're buying a Switch today, right, you're either A, need to save money for some reason, in which case buy the old Switch or a used old Switch, because those are still just great.
Yep.
Or if you have money and you want to get the best Switch, obviously buy the OLED Switch. Why would you buy the other one? But yeah, it's like they released the what we expected to be the upgraded Switch. But all these video game news sites, they were all like, oh, there's going to be an upgraded Switch, which is like, I hate it when they report on these newses, right? Like, it's like if someone comes out in like, July and is like, oh,
there's got to be a new iPhone.
Big leaks, new iPhone this September or October. It's like, there's been a new iPhone every September/October every year since 2000 and like, 8. It's like,
are you a press release or are you in fact just a scheduled appointment?
Exactly. It's like, no, Nintendo's going to release an upgraded, better Switch. And it's like, yeah, like I just said, even the NES got one of those, right? It's like every single Nintendo console is going to get an upgraded version at some point in its life. I can't, like, maybe the Wii U didn't. I think that might be the only one.
Yep. But I want to point out just briefly.
GameCube didn't, I guess. Right? Yeah.
No, GameCube didn't really have any like enhanced version.
There wasn't like a better GameCube.
Well, the problem with the GameCube was just so like perfect that they just made a new console to try to get into different territory.
The point is, game news sites reported on that, right? They got people, hyped up, but they reported on something ridiculous, which they were saying, oh, it seemed like a 4K Switch. And it's like, no, that's not gonna happen.
Or
if it did, it would suck.
Or a quote more powerful Switch that would have higher frame rates for third-party games. Like that was something people were talking about.
Yeah, that it wasn't gonna happen.
Yep.
Like, why would they?
So there was a whole thread in our forum of some fanboys like arguing this. But the three things I want to point out about that space, like to sort of nail this point home, is one, Nintendo's philosophy, as they have publicly stated for many, many, many years, decades even, is use existing, proven, cheap technology to make games that are good at a profit. Don't use the newest, most advanced technology. That is not necessary to make good games. That is like
does it
Nintendo's
make the game
philosophy.
More fun? No, it does not. Right?
Yup. Number two, Nintendo's not going to fracture the user base and the like sale base, the addressable market, if you want to talk about like product management, of the Nintendo Switch when it is still a very healthy, extremely popular console, still running through its prime.
The number one console by a lot.
And three, the people who said, oh, why did they, if they upgraded the screen, why couldn't they make it 4K? Why can't they make it support these third-party games? I can answer that question in 5 words. And those 5 words are, the PS5 weighs 10 pounds.
Yeah. You would have to make like a Switch that would effectively be no different than a PS5. It would just play Nintendo games.
I just imagine pick up a PlayStation 5, tape 2 Joy-Cons to the side. That is what a 4K 60 Switch.
A PlayStation 5 has external power though. You would need to. Where's the battery go?
Oh, and strap a car battery to your waist.
Exactly.
Like the legendary. Oh, I got a Treefort with 6 car batteries and a Sega.
Yeah, 4K is 4 1080p screens. So actually bare minimum, you could do it if you had, well, considering a Switch that's undocked and has to go on battery power, it can do 720p, right? That's 720p is what? Isn't that, you're going to need 4 of those to make a 1080p?
Yep.
So take 16 Switches and a stack and tape them in a bundle. And
it is.
you got to...
It is literally, for any reasonable price point, impossible to have the specs of something like a PlayStation 5 in the form factor of a Nintendo Switch. It's not a matter of just do it better. It's a matter of you fucking can't.
Yeah. I also just want to point out, I think that there's like this impression, the impressions of how big things are. It's something I talk about, I guess, a lot whenever it comes up, right? Like how esports are actually bigger than a lot of pro sports, but because the pro sports are on television and there's more money in them, right? It's like you don't realize how big, League of Legends is because the amount of money behind it and the amount of eyeballs behind it are not in alignment, right? There's a lot of money behind NFL football, but there's not a lot of as many eyeballs. Right. It's like you would think soccer is, if you lived in the US before there was internet, you would think soccer was no big deal, right? Because you can't see. Right. So much in the same way, I think in the video game console world, right, the bigness of PC gaming is sort of invisible because people who live in console countries like the United States can't see all the countries that don't have any fucking consoles and it's PC gaming only. Right. And people also can't see how small actually the quote hardcore, only because I don't have a better word for it, PlayStation, Xbox console audience is relative to the Switch audience, because the vast majority of the Switch, phone game, audience, right, are not in the gaming communities, right? So someone comes around and is like, hey, Nintendo already has like all these, they've got everything, but they don't have that hardcore audience, right? If Nintendo would just make, an ultra powerful console and they got all those games that, Sony and Microsoft have, the Calls of Duty and whatever, they would just take over the whole console world and that would be it. Monopoly.
Nope.
Right?
Anyone who cares about those games already has a PlayStation or an Xbox or a gaming PC.
Or they have a Switch also, probably. They probably do. But, the thing is, Nintendo could do that, right? That's a possible thing, but the perception is that like that would be a worthwhile endeavor. But if you look, I think that the truth is that if you look at the pie of console gaming, the PlayStation Xbox piece of the pie is not a big piece of the pie. Nintendo has the entire rest of the fucking pie, which is well over half.
Yep.
Right? It might even be 2/3 of the pie. And, Nintendo has a piece, right? Those people with PlayStations and Xboxes, some of them already have Switches also, right? But the those hardcore Call of Duty people, right? It's like, it's like none of the PlayStation and Xbox, they've got none of that Nintendo pie. They're not infiltrating it in any way whatsoever,
Well, so actually,
the question you should be asking is not why doesn't Nintendo just eliminate them and take over the gaming?
Why doesn't anyone else try to get into Nintendo's grill and compete with them in that space?
How come Microsoft or Sony or any of the companies that make games for their platforms, how come they have made absolutely no attempt whatsoever to make a fun, quality game that doesn't rely on just ridiculous horsepower, whatever? Right? How come they can't make a game as good as Breath of the Wild and, put it and compete with, they're not even trying.
So there's another angle here that's especially important considering there are massive supply chain disruptions globally right now for a lot of reasons. Chips are hard to get. So why would Nintendo move into new, difficult to acquire, more expensive chips instead of solidifying supply lines they've already protected? But Matt Piscatella, who's an NPD analyst, and he's a big player in the space, he tweeted an analysis of this that I want to read because it's very short, and it describes like the final piece of the puzzle. Quote, back in the day, Nintendo portable revisions would stabilize the demand curve and firm up ASPs. They were about maintaining sales performance and preventing the pull of price drops and stale inventory. The Switch OLED is right out of that successful playbook.
Exactly, right? It's as time goes on, the parts that are in a Switch, right? They sort of get outdated. They're not easier to get. The factories are making newer, different things, right? They're not, the screen clearly is the key component here, right? So, yeah, they stopped making the kind of screen that's in the Switch. They're making these. The factory has switched over to making OLED screens. Okay, so it'll be more economical for us to use those screens in the Switch now instead of the old screen that no one's making anymore. And bonus, we can raise the price on it, right? And get a marketing thing out of it. Maybe someone will upgrade, right? But it's mostly just to stabilize the production process.
Most of the time, if you ask, especially if you're some gamer nerd, like us included, and you ask, like, why doesn't company A do X? The answer is almost always because that wouldn't make any money, or because in Nintendo's case, they're already printing money. They do not, they're doing what they know to do to make money. Your idea would not make them more money.
It's something to do with, and especially when it's any technology, right? A lot of the decisions from almost every technology company, if hardware is involved, have to do with something going on in the factory supply chain level that you know absolutely nothing about, and you're not factoring into any of your thinking. You're only thinking about things on your end when with games of like the game you want to play, or how fun it is, or what's hot now, or
but yeah, even that
stuff,
you're
right?
often thinking from your perspective of, I play these games, I would like to play those games on a Switch. I assume everyone else does exactly what I do. Why don't companies cater to me, this giant demographic? And the answer is, you are not a big demographic.
You're one person.
Like Advance Wars. Why does Nintendo make a new Advance Wars? Because they wouldn't make any fucking money making a new Advance Wars. No one would. There's no way to make money making a game like that.
I think it also, just to bring it back to the things being, the perception of size versus the reality of size. I blame two people for that, right? Well, not two individual people, two groups of people.
Oh, well, on the next Wednesday show, we'll talk about this with the recent news about graphic novel sales.
Yeah, the people who collect the data do not release it freely, and they do not release it in ways that are directly and obviously comparable, right? It's like, even if you look at how many did Animal Crossing sell versus Call of Duty, they don't have the digital sales for Animal Crossing. They only have the physical sales, right? It's like, you can't directly compare any of these fucking things to actually prove without paying
you
money.
can if you are in the industry and pay money to access data to make decisions.
Even if you pay money, the data might not be, that complete.
Oh yeah,
right?
some data is just not available. Some data is bespoke. Sometimes if you want certain kinds of data, you've got to hire a firm to go generate that data from nothing.
Yep. And a lot of the data that comes out is always, they say it in a specific way, right, to make themselves look in the best light. If you watch any Apple keynote, for examples. And then the second thing is, I blame the journalists for not putting, things in the correct size comparison, right? It's like, if you're a journalist, you just got to come out with the truth and be like, look, there are like twice as many people with Switches out there than PlayStation 5s, or whatever the reality is. Like, make people's perception match the reality of the world of how popular and big things really are. Don't make the thing that, is buying ads or that you play, right, seem bigger than it actually is, right? Figure out how many eyeballs are watching a thing or playing a thing. And then, when you're creating the perception of reality in your journalism and media, right, have it match the numbers, right? If something is small time, then poo-poo it. Be like, that's small time. And if something is big time, don't poo-poo it. Make it, as big as it is, right? The Animal Crossing coverage on your site should be like twice or three times as big as the Call of Duty coverage on your site. That's just how it should be, right? Don't go, if you make a big splash on your site and then, for one and not the other, that doesn't match the number of eyeballs. First of all, you're only hurting yourself, right? I don't know why you do this. And two, you're creating the false perception in the world, which damages.
Yep. Like if you want to get an example of this, look at how many people watch, I don't know, the LoL championships versus watch the Super Bowl or the Stanley Cup, and that'll really change your perspective on like the relative popularity of things. Or look at how much
it's really not popular compared to a lot of esports.
Or look at how many manga sell in a given month compared to how many superhero comics sell in like a decade.
Yep, pretty much.
like for real.
Mm-hmm.
So in some last news, that Super Mario 64 cartridge is directly relevant to our main bit today.
Yeah, so we'll bring it up again in the main bit, but yeah, somebody sold a sealed, there were two recent sales. There was an original NES Zelda cartridge sealed in shrink wrap that was sold for a ridiculously large amount of money. And then there was a Mario 64 cartridge in the box, still shrink wrapped, in the plastic protecting case and everything, right? That also sold for the most ever, like
with what, a 9.8 A++ WADA rating. Like, they have a whole system.
Yeah, whatever their system is, but just some ridiculous 1 point something million price. And what's happening here is that basically, people are pumping up the bids, right, in order to create a market for these things. People who probably have a lot of, a large collection, right, of sealed cartridges, because they were, right, probably, you bid high on a few, right, just to make the perception be that they're rare and expensive. And then you can, slowly sell your collection off and profit greatly, right? So do not get into the sealed cartridge trading collecting game at all, right?
Now,
Just
they're if you want to play these games, you can get a cartridge that will work fine and just buy it. Like, they're cheap, they're available. You can also emulate.
an unboxed
remakes.
Mario 64 cartridge is like $1. It's like
Yep.
they're just growing on trees.
But also these artifacts, I'd say that in general, and we'll get to this main bit, but that kind of collecting always rubs me the wrong way because it's very much an Indiana Jones, this belongs in a museum situation at best.
Actually, no, but we'll talk about the main bit.
Well, we'll talk about that in a bit. I could see one of these being in a museum somewhere for archaeological purposes.
The museum people I've seen, the game preservationists I've seen on Twitter.
I mean, they're mostly focused on preserving all of the media and all of the gameplay.
They're basically completely uninterested. They're like, it's pointless to, retail stuff is not rare. It's not going to be lost to time. We don't give a shit.
Here's an example I would give before we. Imagine if a museum had a recreation of, like an accurate recreation with all real goods of the ticket-taking aisle of NES games from a Toys R Us in the 80s. Like, that would be an exhibit.
I mean, you would like that, but that's not really, preservationists aren't interested in that, right? It's like, it's not the kind of thing's not important for, the kind of video game preservationists out there.
Well, yeah, for most of it. There are people who are interested in the ancillary experiences, like around games.
There are people who are interested in that, but it seems that, like, from a preservationist point of view, the kind of like a actual museum curators, that's not the stuff they're interested in at all. They don't give a shit about preserving those things because they're just like common and out there, right? They're not rare or special or, and they're not useful. You have emulators, you have other ways things are preserved, right? They don't need that.
But anyway, things of the day. So check this out. This is a video that has a whole bunch of true, like, verifiable facts about Pokemon as a franchise, various Pokemon games, but they're all extremely weird and useless and oddly specific. Like, did you know that in all Pokemon games, except the 5th generation games, when you use fly to go to a town, you are placed directly in front of that town's Pokemon Center. But in the 5th generation games, you are placed one full step in front of the Pokemon Center instead.
I didn't know that, but I mean, I knew it takes you to the Pokemon Center, but I didn't know in the 5th generation you're one step ahead.
That's all facts like that. This is a 10-minute long video of things that you can... These facts serve one purpose: to annoy Pokemon fans if you happen to be around them.
Okay.
So what do you got?
So also in collecting sort of news, right? This is really recent. It could be a news, but it's so great. It's thing of the day territory. This woman named Linda, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm sorry, Guillory. I'm going to, but yeah, when she was young, right? And being 51, I can sort of see, someone about, that much older than me, right? 10 plus years older than me, right? It's like, when she was growing up, right, she didn't have the NES. She had, the LCD games, like the little tiny Coleco that plays Pac-Man only, that looks like a little arcade cabinet, right?
Yep.
Or like little electronic football with the LED lights in it, right? That's the kind of game that she was growing up with. And in fact, getting those games and, repairing them when she was a kid led her to a career in electrical engineering. So that's awesome. But yeah, so she went on to, she just loved the fuck out of those things and began collecting them at some point and has built up a collection that I'm not a fan of the Guinness Book of World Records, which has a lot of problems, but it's a true thing. She has the largest collection of LCD gaming systems on Earth, is 1599. She might have 1600 by now. She finds just one. And the largest collection of playable gaming systems, right, at 2430, right? So 2,430, video game systems, right? And she has other things as well. Like, if you watch the video, you can see she has every US NES cartridge, right, in a box. I don't think all of them are shrink wrapped, but she has all of them, right? I think with boxes and manuals. Like she just has, and I guess she made good money in electrical engineering, right? And it says she's in Texas where the cost of living is low, so plenty of money to spend on collecting these things, not all of which are expensive. And she started way long ago, right?
Yeah.
When there was less hype. So yeah, she just has a massive collection, and we'll talk about again in the main bit, but in the video, she just whips them out and plays them, right? She is not one of those shrink wrap, turn the page, wash your hands kind of collectors, right? She is like, children, come into my collecting room, let us play,
That's like the classic arcade guys. Like, yes, here's these very rare, difficult to repair, like electromechanical games. Please come and play them. They're meant to be played.
I learned in this a few things I learned in this video. One of that was really interesting is that Simon, right? The 4-button Simon.
Oh yeah.
Apparently in Japan, the Simon was white and not black. She has a white Simon.
Ooh, I see that photo.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And the other thing that I thought was really notable in this video is how she has a lot of sports-related games, right? Especially those LCD, LED ones. A lot of them were sports-related.
I had a few of those.
She knows and points out who the athletes are on all of the games that have like an actual pro athlete on the box somewhere. She's like, look, there's OJ Simpson. Look, I got this boxing game. There's Muhammad Ali. Oh, look, there's, Dallas Cowboys, whoever on this football game. And it's like, I love that, the appreciating that, because it was before, all these things were made well before the days of like who's on the Madden box, right?
Yeah.
It's like, someone's on it's just like a random football drawing on some box, and there's a guy, you can tell with the team and the number, and she's like, oh, there's so-and-so on the box. It's like, so I appreciate that appreciation that she has there. So yeah, if you want to collect things the way Linda collects things. It's pretty awesome.
So, in the meta moment, the Geek Nights Book Club book, which I'm still reading at a steady but slightly slowed pace because I've also been doing stuff outside, The Tale of Genji. Not just an early novel, but the first novel anywhere on Earth that a human wrote. Genji continues to sleepwalk through life, and
also in meta moment, we're not going to any fucking in-person conventions. You can forget that shit. But at least not anytime soon. But there's an online convention really soon. Like, it already kind of sort of started, in fact.
This weekend, like, there's several days. PAX
Camp. Is it called Camp PAX or PAX East Online?
It is
PAX
called
East Online,
PAX.
Camp PAX. What's?
It was called PAX Online East officially, but when they sent us all the stuff, because we made a panel that we'll talk about in a second, the branding was that it is Camp PAX. So it is Camp PAX, like it's a summer camp theme, but also it is officially called PAX Online East.
Okay, so yeah, we recorded a panel that will be broadcast when on what channel?
It is Saturday, July 17th at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time on the PAX 2 Twitch stream, Atari Game Design. We play a bunch of single-player Atari games. We talk about various game design elements of those. We play a game that neither one of us had played before, the actual Pitfall 2. Which was surprisingly good, and we learned some stuff about it in the course of...
I didn't even really know it existed.
Yeah, that song that plays, the checkpoints. There's a lot going on there.
So yeah, the Camp PAX Online 2021 Discord is live, I guess, if you bought a ticket with money. But soon it will be open to the general public. So that is where you're going to want to go for all your PAX action.
Yep, and we'll try to be in there, like the YouTube stream and the Twitch stream, all the places this appears, and the Discord. We'll try to just be there to answer questions if you have any in the chat. Though if it's really sunny on Saturday, I might be doing that like from a park somewhere on a laptop.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen. But yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that.
And Scott introduced a new bit in the last Geek Night, so we're going to keep going. Only one of us can do it per show, so I'm doing it this time. Second dibs. So
yeah, I successfully sold the monitor to the listener. They received it today and seemed to be happy with it. So hooray. Let's see if Rim can manage to sell something. What are you trying to sell?
So I have the Ogre Big Battle Box, that gigantic fucking box that is like all of Ogre. It was one of the first Kickstarters.
You had to explain what it is.
So Ogre is a game by Steve Jackson that is actually a really cool asymmetric two-player war game, like capital W war game.
It's a really old turn-based, war, map, things on a map war game, but it was out of print for a long time, and they kickstarted to bring it back in print. And when they kickstarted it, they went too far.
I believe the technical term would be whole hog on this. They went ham.
They went ham.
So this box is like the size of an end table. It includes so many components. It is everything that ever existed, even tangentially related to Ogre. You can play every scenario, everything. It's kind of amazing. But I live in a New York City apartment, and this thing is way too big to play in that environment.
Never played it even one time.
Nope, because there's online.
Played it any time. If you would have said, "Hey, let's actually take a whole day and play Ogre," you just never wanted to do that and never asked.
When we would have, if we had a house with a gaming table where I could just leave it set up for a period of time, like one of those ones where I could like put a cover over it and use the table.
Yeah, well, that didn't happen.
So
now you're stuck with it.
This is second dibs because I do know some people who, once it is safe for me to visit them, they may be willing to take it from me. And there's a game store who, if I'm willing to drive it there, which at some point I will be in that place at the right time, I will give it to them. But if you want this giant box, and I'll link to it, before I deal with it in one of these other ways, if you're willing to pay for shipping, I will mail it to you, but I will warn you.
So shipping only, you're selling it for $0.
I'll sell it for $0 if you're willing to pay for shipping. And I will warn you, shipping will not be cheap. This thing is also heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And with
Depends
that,
how far it goes. If you're not shipping it far, it could be.
I mean, if you live in New York City and you'll meet me at like Queensboro Plaza, I will carry it there and hand it to you.
Okay.
So let's get right into it in our main bit, collecting in games.
So there's a lot of things we have to say about collecting things in general. We're going to avoid those. I want to talk specifically, on the collecting of games, specifically the cartridges to games that had cartridges, or games that were sold physically on CDs or whatever, right? And also the video games, and also the collecting of tabletop games, right? Board games and boxes, right? Those two things only pertinent to those very specific collecting hobbies, right? So in the video game hobby, right, we're seeing the usual things we're seeing in other collecting hobbies, which is people doing it for the money.
Yep.
Right? Speculation, right? You're buying some cartridge, that's sealed in a box with a grade on it because you think in found some greater fool, right? In some number of years, it'll be worth even more and you can sell it again. So you think it's like an investment, right? Or at least some fool thinks it's an investment and you just sold it to them and you made bank. Good on you, but you're an evil, ripper-offer bad person.
Of course, it's tricky because one could argue that, well, they found value in it, but very few people, I believe, who collect those kinds of things are doing so for reasons other than thinking it's an investment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, almost all of the games that people are paying these, we're seeing high prices for things like, like I said, Zelda 1 cartridge. It's like, we have Zelda 1, guys. It's right. It's like, if there was a situation,
I have a Zelda 1 cartridge. It's just not like mint in box and I threw the manual away, but I've got it.
Yeah. If we were seeing things like, ultra rare, prototype cartridge, no one has a ROM of this even. But that's the stuff.
Well, here's the thing. I can boil this down.
Preservationists are actually looking for, right?
The cartridges that are selling for big bucks are selling primarily based on how popular and how much current nostalgia is there for the game itself. Not the rarity of that particular piece of plastic. That's what's going on here. And the rarity of like mint in box things seem to have a fairly constant level of rarity for a lot. Like you look at any given sector and you'll find like a percentage of mint in boxes from unshipped inventory or lost in a warehouse. Like there's sort of a churn of those kinds of things anyway. But
bought it but never gave it to my kid on Christmas because he misbehaved.
Yep, found it in an attic, fell off a truck. But I feel that rarity, like whether or not a mint in box exists, irrespective of all the other factors involved, doesn't seem to actually be tied to the prices people are paying for these things. They're paying based on Mario 64 is a very important game. Therefore, this piece of plastic is very important.
Yep, which is not true at all. That's not how value things work, right? I mean, well, I guess it does. What is someone willing to pay? But the thing is, was someone really willing to pay that, or someone was just paying that to trick others into being willing to pay that, right? It's like they if they, if they had to keep it, right? If they had to, they could never resell it, and they could never, they didn't have any effect on boosting the prices of other things they owned. If they were buying it to have it, and would that person really have paid that much for the Mario 64? No. So that's not really what someone's willing to pay for it.
Yep.
Right?
And also, it's this whole idea of a mint in box mostly came out of the rarity of like subsets of nostalgic items from like old baseball cards. There were things that people didn't think were valuable, and then over time got lost and destroyed. And then eventually people wanted to have those things again. And because they were rare, the value went up. Like, sure, that's reasonable. Like, trying to think of a good, like an old comic book, like the first appearance of Cyclops or the X-Men or Spider-Man.
Well, some of those comics are really common, right? You can just like, you want a Dark Phoenix saga, right? This is something people don't realize, is that X-Men actually is a great example, because X-Men was so popular, they sold so many comics that even these really hot, you think these hot series like Dark Phoenix Saga, it's like you can get a Dark Phoenix Saga for not too much money because it was so popular, it was so great. There's tons of them, right?
Yep.
It's sold, right? It's the shit that was either so old that people didn't care about preserving it, like a Superman Action Comics, whatever, or stuff that was less popular, so there weren't too many out there, but then somehow gained significance later.
Yep.
Right?
But then there was a lot of news and a lot of pop culture ideas around those old things that actually were rare for various reasons became valuable because more people wanted them than they existed. But then people started the trend of whenever anything new came out, they would speculate on, will this be the big popular thing in the future, and try to keep mint in-box versions as investments. But because so many people did that, they're still around. There's plenty of them.
If you think that, well, okay, even if something becomes a bust, I just got to hold out even longer and hold out even longer and hold out even longer until eventually will be worth something, right? It's like, no, look at Beanie Babies. They won't be worth anything ever, right? They will not go up, period, the end, right? So, video games, I think, the cartridges, CDs, right? The mint in box part makes even less sense, because if you think about comic books especially, right? Part of the reason you want them to be mint and such and in the best possible condition is so that if you were to read them, you could actually make out the fucking words and see the correct colors, right? Not that the printing technology was that great for old ones, but the condition of the thing somewhat matters, right? Even a baseball card, like the condition of it kind of matters if you want to enjoy the thing, looking at it, right? And such. If you have a video game, a beat-up old Mario 64 cartridge plays the same damn fucking game as a brand new mint in box one. There is no fucking difference. Not one, right? So having it be mint doesn't matter, right? So the enjoyment level is unaffected. As long as it's functioning, right? It's good to go.
Now, case in point, when I was a kid, the thing that I did fall into this trap and collect for a while because I thought they'd be worth something, because I'd see them being sold, individual cards for a lot of money, were like those 90s X-Men collectible cards.
I collected them just because I like the cards.
I collect because I like the cards.
I was actually looking at them recently. I still like those cards.
I do like those cards a lot.
I like actually thinking like, man, I was like, because I know there are still some collectible card sets being made these days. And I was like, hey, I wonder if has anyone made any X-Men cards right now? Is there a current set? Because if there's a current set, it's like maybe I would buy a
So I just looked up one of the sets that I really liked and collected, the 1990 Impel Marvel Universe set. There were 162 cards in it. It's one of the sets I collected. Yep. You can buy a complete set of it today for under $200, and
that's about right. Yeah.
The most expensive card, the going rate in that entire set. There's a few that are slightly hard to get, but
I think there's a special Stan Lee card in that set.
Yeah, no one has a long shot that I can see, but the Punisher one goes for the whopping price of $4.
Ooh. Spicy.
I feel like I was paying like 75 cents to $1 a card in 90s dollars when I was collecting these things. So
Yeah. I actually, for me, it was the third Impel series, the space one.
Ooh, I had some of those. I like those a lot.
I collected the most of those. I almost had the full set.
The one I tried to get the whole set of was the Wolverine specific series.
Well, those were really low quality cards, paper-wise.
Yep, and then there were foils that would.
I have like one pack of those. And
there would be occasional foil cards in those packs, and I have like two of the foils. As far as I can tell, those aren't worth anything either.
Not worth nothing. But yeah, we're supposed to be only talking about the video game. So the point is, video game collecting, you're either collecting some retail object that is common as dirt, that the price has been, manipulated, right? If you're collecting something of actual historical value, right? Like I said, prototype cartridges, artifacts from, development, ultra rare things.
Yep.
It's like either A, some of those things have been preserved, right? For example, like Nintendo World Championship cartridges, right? You can get the ROM of that, no problem. Or those are the things that belong in a museum, right? If you get one, I feel you're morally responsible to be making a ROM, right? You don't be, right?
Well, because, to get to
you shouldn't be charging a bunch of money for those things either.
Because we got into the comic book stuff where, like, the thing itself has some intrinsic value because the thing was the thing. But in this case, the thing is the game, and the game is just a bunch of code.
Yeah. There's no, like, historical... there's not much historical value in preserving like the physical, Mario Duck Hunt cartridge, even if it was the, maybe if it was the literal last one, right?
There's got to be at least a few around somewhere that are preserved enough for someone to investigate them if we need to investigate them.
Right. But, if you had, for example, like, development builds of Mario Brothers, right? When you go to the Nintendo store and they have the pieces of paper where they were planning out Mario levels, right? Those have extreme significance, right? And should be in a museum and are worthy of collecting. So I can see, it's fun and cool, to have a collection, right? And my thing of the day, Linda, like I said, she had every NES US release game, still in box, right? Presumably with instruction manual.
But she also, it's a cool complete collection. She also has a bunch of standalone, like, playable console things, like things that could be played.
She's playing those, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and it's like she's not treating them like she's going to resell them for a fortune, right? She legitimately enjoys having them. So she paid a price for them that are equal to the enjoyment that she felt she would get for them. She wasn't paying a price to then be like, hey, I'll sell these later and get rich, right? She seems to be doing well enough to have that collection in the first place. I don't think she doesn't need any more.
In board games, because we've gone on pretty long in the show already, but board games are almost this special case that bother me more, because we're not talking about like collecting Warhammer figures, because arguably you need those if you're playing Warhammer. Like, that's a different thing. So we're talking about...
Right. The board game collecting world seems to be better in one way, in that there isn't a lot of speculation. There isn't really a bunch of people other than Magic cards, like in Pokemon cards, which is the specific CCG area of tabletop.
The word collectible is in the name.
Right, but when you get to like a Settlers or, other than like a very few specific instances, like maybe someone's got like the first Settlers ever, or someone's got an ancient Monopoly or something like that, right? It's like, you're not buying and reselling board games for the money. There are some out-of-print games that end up going up in price just because they're out of print, but it's not a speculator's market. You're not grading them and putting them in sealed boxes that can never be opened, right? But what we are seeing are people who are buying tabletop games, and their primary interest, they're playing them, right?
Yep, they don't leave them in, but like they'll open it, they'll play it once usually.
Yeah, they're playing, they're opening, they're playing them some, right? But their primary interest is having, right? They, or they're not playing them that much. Like, we buy a game, it's like we're playing the fuck out of it, we're studying it, we're trying to figure out everything there is to figure out about its systems. We don't give a shit about the cardboard it's printed on, right? Or the dice that come with it, or the miniatures that come with it, or the quality of those miniatures, or or any of that stuff, right? It's nice to have nice components, right? My new Oath came with like metal coins. They're nice.
Or like I did buy the
I'm happy to
limited
play with the cardboard coins. I don't give a shit.
Like I did buy the limited edition when they re-released Puerto Rico, like the last really good printing of it, because it came with like really nice coins and really nice components. But I didn't buy it because I thought it would be valuable or special. I bought it because it's more pleasant to play with those nice components. Granted, the first time I brought it to the table, some fucking nerd spilled an entire coffee on like one of the boards, but I digress.
It's still playable.
Yeah.
It's not the worst. But yeah, when you look though, right, at the board gaming community, if you go somewhere like Board Game Reddit, right, or Board Game Geek, it becomes apparent there are definitely people out there who care about playing games. I think all the people you're not collecting games if you don't care about playing them at all, right?
Yep.
But there are definitely people who care more, or at least appear to care more about owning than playing, right?
Yep,
And
you see this in pop.
They're sleeving their cards, right? They're,
I would argue
worried about-
sleeving cards ends up being a playability issue when expansions come out and things like that. And then you have a set of worn cards mixed in with a set of brand new cards.
Well, they would just sleeve those ones anyway. But there's people who care, but they're really worried about like preserving the physical object of the game, and they really, really enjoy. If you look at the games they prefer to buy, right? They are, choosing to spend their money when they go to buy new games on games that have fancier, nicer metal, wood components, right? And eschewing games that are just like, some cardboard.
I'd say it's even
if it's an
simpler than
amazing
that
game.
for that aspect is I see, especially if you look at a lot of board game documentaries, including the one going cardboard that we were featured in alongside a bunch of other people. The conversation in pop culture, when like regular ass news media look at tabletop, they often ask people, "Oh, how many games do you own?" And if you look at a lot of these conversations, a lot of these people tend to frame their conversations about games in terms of, "I own 167 tabletop games. My collection is this big."
Yep. And also people who are like, what game should I buy? The discussions are always like, what do I buy? Or I have to cull my collection. What should I get rid of? Right.
Yep.
It's like,
You know what? I call games I don't play.
The things that we talk about, which is how to win, right? How is this game designed, right? Rules wise. They're not having those discussions in those communities.
There's a big focus on having how big is your collection of tabletop games? But then the worst
photos of their board game shelves.
Yep.
Right?
The subset of that though that actually really bothers me because it does impact the industry is
the part that bothers me too. Yeah.
Yep. The people who buy games. This is primarily a problem on Kickstarter. The Ghostbusters game I complain about a lot, but that was the tip of the iceberg. Like the floodgates opened after that. Games will be tied to an intellectual property that is popular and be kickstarted, but it seems like the people who buy a lot of these games are buying them solely either because they think they can resell the game after the Kickstarter because
I don't think anyone's looking at reselling.
I was poking around. I found some people talk a lot of Kickstartered games like this, like even the Ghostbusters game. They don't get resold after that, and people are missing a component and will pay a lot for that component. Like, the Kickstarter exclusive Slimer, that kind of crap. Now, people think they'll make money from that, but they kickstart the game just to get the components and be able to say they have the game. And if you look at reviews of these games, people seem to focus almost entirely on the quality of those miniatures. It's almost like they're actually kickstarting the miniatures, and the game literally doesn't matter because I would say,
why even put rules? You're just selling physical objects, right? Like you might as well be selling action figures, right? And so the reason this bothers me is it's like, okay, those people enjoying themselves, spending their money however they want, okay, whatever. But all of the companies that are at least nominally producing tabletop games, right? Most of their money is coming from those people. If you only had the people who cared about playing games, buying games, board gaming would not be a large industry at all, right? So in one way...
Well, parts of it would. Parts of it have exploded anyway, but the longer tail of games that we like...
Well, I'm saying is that thankfully those people are propping up the industry with their money. So that's a positive impact, right? But the negative impact is that in turn, the industry caters to that interest, right? So the people producing games, right, are, largely especially if you look at Kickstarter, but a large chunk of the board game tabletop industry are making games with focusing on fancy components, right? You know, big, lots and lots of extra shit, giant, expensive boxes just full of goodies to appeal to that market and not making quality games, right? Even look at something like, Modern Art, right? An amazing game in a tiny box. And all it is what? It's a pack of cards and some chips, right? You buy an old printing of this, it looks like garbage, but the game is just as amazing. But like the newer version of the game comes with like a gavel for your auction and like a little easel.
Cool. That's neat.
It's cool. It's cool and neat. I agree.
But there's no mechanic around that gavel. Fuck you. Don't put that gavel in that box.
They're putting that there. If there wasn't that aspect to the industry of, they're trying to sell that, they didn't put that gavel in there if they didn't think it's going to help sell the game, right?
Yep.
And so, Modern Art, the rules aren't any different. So at least the game isn't hurt by including the gavel. But people are making new games that are basically just, wooden gavel in a box with some, rules.
Now, where I'd make the distinction,
the game.
There was definitely a discourse in the 90s and early 2000s around gimmicks in games. Like El Grande, did it really need that giant king feast and that giant Castile? Does Camel Up really need that pyramid? The answers are those were gimmicky, sure, but they were mechanical gimmicks in the games themselves. They were mechanically relevant to the game. It's not like El Grande came with a crown for whoever moved the king to wear.
Yeah, and it didn't have, and it was just a piece of wood. It wasn't like, some fancy sculpted thing that, where obviously they're spending the people producing the game are spending their time crafting the physical object rather than crafting the rules of the game, right?
Now, I do care about the quality of the components in the sense that
to some extent, yeah, they matter.
Do they, like,
they don't not matter?
You say some extent, but would you play Glory to Rome if the only version available was that clip art version?
I mean, would I play Glory to Rome, even the new version? It's like, yeah, occasionally, but yeah. The old
I have recordings of you saying that you would refuse to play the old version, that the new version is objectively far superior just because it looks better.
It is far superior. The old one is kind of hard to read, and it makes it a little bit of
Oh, no, you even if it wasn't hard to read, you went on at length about how it's so ugly, purely aesthetically, that you would refuse to play it.
All right, well, I wouldn't choose to play it. I wouldn't choose to play the...
I'm just saying, their aesthetics matter. Like a game that looks better and feels better.
You can,
but also that higher quality
is important. But it's not like you're not. That's not the first thing you're doing here. The first thing is to make a game that is fun to play, and then you produce the components appropriately, right, to suit the game that you have made. If you're producing components first, right, just to sell them to this segment of the market, right, that's willing to pay, and then your rules are just like a thing you do, because it's a game, I guess.
Yep. I always hark back to that Ghostbusters Kickstarter because they're all like that now, where you look at some board game Kickstarter, they highlight the quality of the components and like how they're going to build the game and everything.
Stretch goal, even more minis, stretch goal, metal coins, stretch goal, cloth maps, it's like... I just bought Oath. It has a mouse pad cloth-ish, roll-up map, and it came with metal. I paid for the minimum level. They gave me metal coins and fancy like rosin books for the secrets.
Actually, the listener pointed out too, and then we can bring up the aesthetics of 18xx games.
Oh, we can.
Because the physical games often have a beautifully printed board that's also hard to read because graphic design is definitely a passion for a lot of people who design 18xx games. But the way we play them is on 18xxgames.net, where here's some fucking yellow and green hexagons with bright primary colors and a bunch of numbers everywhere.
Yep. It's like, that's plenty of fun, right? The train game would not have its fun improved with like little metal trains.
Yep. Right? But I guess what I was suggesting to you, because we've gone on long on the show, is one, if you're going to collect board games, like that's cool, but just think about why you're collecting them and what you're doing with them. And please don't be that guy. That's a gender neutral term here, but that guy who brings up how many board games they own unasked.
Yeah.
Because that is a pernicious part of our community.
if you're going to collect things, right, you want to look at my thing of the day and you want to collect like Linda, right? If you're not, regularly going into that collection room, right, with the children, right, and going wild and just having a ball with playing with all the awesome fun things you've collected, right, because they're fun toys, right? If you got a comic book collection, if you're not regularly going in and reading tons of awesome comic books and sharing them with everybody, right, then in my opinion, you're doing it wrong, right? You're either A, trying to make money, you're just owning things, which is consumerist and capitalist, and therefore I am really opposed
there
to
are
it.
games I don't particularly like and don't play often that I did buy and keep, but there's one reason for that. These are games that are not in print, do not appear to be likely to be in print again at any time in the future, and if they came back into print and were widely available, I would get rid of my copies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, remember, La Cheetah was hard to get for a long time.
Even need them if you're not going to play them? Why do you even need the out of print one?
Because I might play it. It has to be at least a game I would consider playing, or a game that I want to preserve for some reason that I don't think is well preserved. It's a rare case. That's the point.
There's not a lot of games that need preserving there.
Yeah, I was a little worried. I didn't think La Cheetah would ever get reprinted, but lo and behold, it got reprinted not that long ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for example, right? I guess the oldest, rarest game I got is that 70s Dune. I went, before it was a thing, I went on eBay and I picked one up, and it's really got pretty much all the components complete-ish, right? It's not perfect mint condition ever, but we just fucking play it.
Yep, but there is a piece just like video game preservation. I hope that someone
came out with a new one. I'll still play my old 70s.
Yeah, but I'm saying I hope that people preserve old physical versions of these games, because unlike a cartridge where the content of the cartridge is the same no matter what the cartridge is,
that's true.
A physical copy of a game from like imagine in the year 2059 if someone has oh, this is what Puerto Rico looked like when it was first released, here's a physical copy you can interact with. That's important preservation. It's harder and more important, arguably, for old tabletop games than it is for video games.
That's true, but also old tabletop games are generally, well preserved wherever they are, right?
You'd think that some of them are hard to get because, there was eras where no one thought to keep them.
I mean, yeah, the super old ones, right, are going to be hard to get, but it's like,
Well, now there's some nerd who's probably collecting it.
If you go to PAX Unplugged, they just got vintage tabletop room. And it's like, here you go. Play all these old games, 60s, 70s. Here they are. Play them. Go ahead. They're not a big deal. Yeah.
All right. At that point, I think we've gone on long enough, almost an hour and 20 minutes. So
okay,
that's the end of that.
Good. We got to do more. We got to stop bailing. So we stop doing.